So, welcome everybody this afternoon to our Mercator lecture within the framework of our project, Desirable Digital Transformation. So let me briefly sketch the project and then introduce our Mercator visiting professor, Shoukei Matsumoto, to you within the context of our ongoing project. So what we do in Desirable Digital Transformation is, in particular in this part of the project, we look at how cultural difference affects both the use of AI systems in larger socio-technical context, but also the very production of code. So one of the questions we have been asking is, is there a different type of AI for different languages? What's the relationship between natural language and coding, in addition to the obvious cultural question of how AI systems are used, what counts for their acceptance in different cultural contexts and so forth. And in this context, I've been having wonderful conversations before he came here in Tokyo, in particular with Shoukei Matsumoto on issues of shared concern. And then we also met in New York again, discussing the fundamental question whether we ought to build something that he and I then started calling Alpha Buddha, where Alpha Buddha would be an ethical AI system. We're actually now constructing a version of it. And an ethical AI system here is not merely, say, a Gen AI, LLM type of system that is subject to, rules and regulations, but rather a system that enhances the moral standing of its users. Just in the idea was that given that LLMs are particularly good and other Gen AI systems at pattern detection and pattern recognition, why not then feed the system the type of ethical information that would be available to the best human knower and see what it would take for the system to then outperform us in moral reasoning. Under certain meta-ethical conditions, this is a meaningful project. So this also means that we are testing, empirically testing meta-ethical ideas. And it would be outrageous to do that, like if we couldn't exclude narrow, Eurocentric or otherwise centric conditions on value judgment, hence also the need in sub-project 1, which hosts Shoukei Matsumoto, to include, like various other traditions, in this case, Pure Land Buddhism. So Shoukei Matsumoto has over 20 years of experience as a Pure Land Buddhist. And so just on a footnote, it's one of the major Buddhist schools in Japan. It's part of Mahayana Buddhism. And one of the most famous Pure Land Buddhists was Shinran, who founded the Japanese school Jodo Shinsho. It's one of the biggest still in Japan. Also, Shinran happens to be quite an amazing philosopher. So we're talking here, 12th century after Christ in our way of accounting for time. And this is a very important school of Buddhism in Japan, represented by Shoukei Matsumoto. Moreover, of course, he has a philosophy degree from the University of Tokyo, so he's also fluent in the types of conversations we're having, and an MBA from the Indian Business School. So he spent quite some time in India and has also founded his own company called Interbeing, which deals with socioeconomical issues, bringing together ethical and economic value. He also happens to be a famous author. I think his most sold and famous book is called A Monk's Guide to Cleaner House and Mind, published by Penguin, translated into many languages. We met at Musashino Daigaku, Musashino University in Tokyo last year, where I had the honor of being guest in a podcast he has been recording for Musashino University Camphor Tree Village, where we also discussed the question of what it is to be a good ancestor, a very important discussion in various Japanese contexts, and more specifically of, again, what it would take to make an entirely different use of ethical AI systems in a context that at first glance strikes us as alien here in Europe, given, famously the quite different ontologies that you find in Japan and around here. Ever since we started talking about this, I'm becoming more and more convinced that mountains are animals, but that's a longer conversation to be had. It's more meaningful than it sounds if I put it this way. Now, today he will explore precisely the, in a different sense from the Californian sense, transhumanist perspective of AI, and will give the Mercator Lecture on the topic Beyond the Human Perspective, which is part of the focus of what he is doing here during our visit. And we are very much looking forward, Shoukei, to your talk, and welcome to Bonn again, and thanks already for your lecture. Now the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shoukei Matsumoto. It is a big honor to be here at the University of Bonn, historic center of Western thought. As a Japanese Buddhist priest, my presence here might seem a little bit unusual, maybe. I'm here as part of the program generously offered by Professor Gabriel, and also your colleagues, and seeking to build a bridge between two great intellectual traditions, German philosophy and Buddhist thought, as I work on my next book, Human Literacy. My purpose today is to share some intermediate ideas which I'm working on from this project. I want to explore how dialogue between Buddhism and particular strand of contemporary German philosophy can offer us a new lens through which to view ourselves, our mind, and our future with artificial intelligence. The foundation for this dialogue, I believe, has been powerfully laid by Professor Gabriel's New Realism. Your philosophy, particularly the provocative and liberating thesis that the world does not exist, has the potential to transform the landscape of religious and spiritual discourse, I think. By demonstrating that the world, understood as a single, all-encompassing container for everything that is a logical impossibility. His work creates an authentic space for pluralism, right? So you argues that what exists is not one world, but an infinite plurality of real fields of sense, or Zin Felder, maybe. All right. This insight is particularly crucial for non-monotheistic traditions like Buddhism. For centuries, traditions that do not posit a single all-powerful God have often been marginalized or misunderstood within a dominant global discourse shaped by monotheistic assumptions, or more recently by a totalizing scientific materialism, which itself posits a single, all-encompassing physical universe as the only reality. So, Gabriel, your work allows us to move beyond those zero-sum games. It allows us to affirm the reality of, for example, Amida Buddha within his specific field of sense without placing him in logical conflict with the field of sense of physics. This philosophical move opens a new, respectful, and non-competitive horizon for religious dialogue. It is on this new horizon that we confront the defining challenge of our era, the emergence of artificial intelligence. AI is more than just a new tool. It is a unique mirror. It is a form of non-conscious, non-biological intelligence that forces us to re-examine the very nature of what it means to be human, to think, and to hold a perspective. This technological shift isn't merely about productivity or efficiency. It is an existential and philosophical catalyst that calls for a new kind of literacy. The central question I wish to explore today is this. What kind of literacy do we need to navigate this new era to coexist fruitfully with these new forms of intelligence and to understand our own minds more deeply? The core argument I will present is this. The fundamental human challenge, one that is amplified and illuminated by the rise of AI, is a cognitive and existential error where I call perspective fixation. Perspective fixation is the deep-seated human tendency to mistake our own limited, conditional viewpoint, our particular field of sense, for the whole of reality, for the world itself, and human literacy, as I will define it, is the ongoing dynamic practice of becoming aware of this tendency and learning to dissolve its grip. It is a path of liberation from self-imposed confinement, a path that, I will argue, has been the central project of Buddhism for 2,500 years. To understand this path of liberation, we must first understand the architecture of our confinement. The concept of perspective fixation rests on the philosophical foundation laid by New Realism. So let me first offer a brief, accessible explanation of its core thesis, briefly, at the front of Professor Gabriel. So when Professor Gabriel claims the world does not exist, he is not being nihilist. He's not denying the reality of the chair you are sitting on or the thoughts in your head. What he denies is the existence of a single grand, all-encompassing container that holds all of these things together, right? So his axiom is simple but profound. To exist is to appear in a field of sense. A coffee cup exists in the field of physical objects. The number 7 exists in the field of mathematics. That character, Harry Potter, or whatever exists very robustly in the field of fictional literature. All of these are real within their respective fields. The crucial point is that there is no master field or container of all containers. that could hold all other fields. Such a concept is a logical contradiction, much like a list that contains itself. The belief in such a singular world is a metaphysical illusion. This insight is very powerful because it directly dismantles the foundation for any totalizing worldview, whether it be a religious dogma claiming to have the one true God or scientific materialism claiming the physical universe is all there is. With this philosophical foundation, um, we can now formally define perspective fixation. It is the cognitive and existential error of taking one's own familiar field of sense and illegitimately universalizing it, mistaking it for the word. It is the act of believing my map is the entire territory. This isn't just a mistake philosophers make. It is a deep-seated human tendency. Our minds, for the very good evolutionary reasons related to cognitive efficiency, are designed to create and fixate or simplified stable models of reality. Language then acts as a powerful amplifier, reifying or hardening these models until they feel like objective absolute truth. But this is not just merely an intellectual game. The ethical stakes of perspective fixations are immense. To show the gravity of this concept, let me use the powerful example, the seemingly universal proposition. Thou shalt not kill a person. Feels universal. This feels like a rule that should apply in a universal world. However, in practice, the definition of person is dangerously fluid. It is often implicitly defined by the boundaries of our own in-group's field of sense. Nowhere is this clearer than in times of war. The machinery of war propaganda works precisely by performing an act of ontological violence. It dehumanizes the enemy. Through rhetoric and the imagery, it casts the other out of the fields of persons who are worthy of moral consideration. They are no longer fathers, sons, or daughters. They become vermin, monsters, or abstractions. This act of perceived perspective fixation, where our moral field of sense shrink to include only us, is what makes mass violence psychologically possible for ordinary people. This demonstrates that overcoming this tendency is not just a philosophical exercise. It is an urgent ethical imperative for human survival. Now, Buddhist part. This very project, the systematic inquiry into the cause of and cures for perspective fixation, has been the central concern of Buddhism for over 2.5 millennia. To make this connection clear for an audience perhaps less familiar with Buddhist thoughts, it is crucial to frame it correctly. Buddhism is best understood not as a religion centered on belief in a creator of God, but as a philosophical and practical project aimed at liberation from suffering or dukkha in Buddhist term, Under roof of this dukkha suffering, Buddhism has consistently claimed is a fundamental cognitive error about the nature of self and reality, an error we can now call perspective fixation. Within this framework, the historical figure of Shakyamuni Buddha can be understood in a new light. He was the first human being to completely and utterly overcome perspective fixation. In the language of new realism, he is the man who ended the world for himself, right? He directly experienced the baseless, groundless, and interdependent nature of reality, a reality not unified by any single container. Buddhist tradition suggests this happened in two key stages. The first stage occurred when he was 35, sitting under the Bodhi tree. This was his cognitive liberation, the moment he became perspective free. He saw through the illusion of a fixed, independent self and the solid world it seemed to inhabit. The second stage occurred 45 years later, at the age of his 80, at the moment of his death, or parinirvana. This was his physical liberation. By shedding the body, he was freed from the final ultimate anchor of a single located perspective. He achieved a state of complete perspective freeness in Buddhist definition. The 45 years between these two events are fascinating. This was a period where he, a perspective-free being, compassionately used his physical body as an interface. He was being who was, in a sense, everywhere in his understanding, but he manifested in a specific body somewhere for the sake of us, the people who are not yet awakened, who are still trapped somewhere in our fixed perspectives. After the Buddha's physical death, the central problem for Buddhist community became, how do we encounter a Buddha we can no longer meet? This was the beginning of Mahayana Buddhism, and this interface problem became a powerful engine for creativity, leading to the development of various skillful means or to bridge this gap. Sutras like this is very a theme, but actually we have lots of sutras, series of sutras. So the sutras like this, the recorded words of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha or Buddha, became a textual and auditory interface. Statues and paintings became a visual interface. Furthermore, the very concept of Buddha began to diversify. Figures like Amita Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light. Yeah, this is the shape of Amita Buddha. Or the bodhisattvas like Kannon, who embodies compassion, can be understood as the creation of different types of interfaces. Each was tailored to the diverse psychological and spiritual needs of human beings. This is a classic expression of a core Buddhist pedagogical principle called Tariki Seppo, the practice of tailoring the teaching to the specific capacity and situation of each listener. There is no one-size-fits-all path because there is no one-size-fits-all form of perspective fixation. Okay, so today I brought a sutra and bell. So to give you a direct experiential sense of this interface, I like to share the sound of the most beloved sutra in Japan, Heart Sutra, or Hanya Shingyo. So if you want to know the meaning of this, sutra, you could follow the paper. Maka anya aramita shingyo 漢字財宝殺行人般若波羅蜜多寺証券王雲海空洞一切空薬者利子式不育空不式式即税空空即税式重創業式薬分尿税者利子税小空相平生不滅不空不上不増不減税国地無式無重創業式無限に微税心に無式証拠未速報無限界内し無意識界無無明薬無無明人内し無老死薬無老死人無空終滅道無知薬無得意無所特攻菩提サッタエハンニャハラミタコシムケゲムケゲコムクオンリ一切天道無双空境ネハンサンゼ小仏エハンニャハラミタコトクアノクタラ三脈三菩提コチアンニャハラミタ税大人種、税大名種、税無常種、税無東道種、農場一切空、真実公、公説安若ハラミタ種、即説種、圧ギャテギャテ、ハラギャテ、ハラソギャテ、ボジソアカ、アンニャ信用。Thank you. So this sutra is chanted daily by millions in Japan, often at family altars. It's a repetition of know something, denying everything. As a way to connect with ancestors and to remind oneself of the nature of reality. This is a reality for the Buddhist followers. The core message of this sutra is considered into a single profound concept, shunyata, usually translated as emptiness, which might be, creating a confusion for a Western philosophical audience. This word can be dangerously, misleading. It does not mean nothingness, a void or nihilistic abyss. Philosophically, shunyata means the absence of a fixed, independent, self-sufficient essence, what in Sanskrit is called svabhava. So things are empty of a standalone, inherent nature. They do not exist from their own side. This doctrine is inextricably linked to another core Buddhist teachings, dependent origination. This is the principle that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other phenomena. If this exists, that exists. If this ceases to exist, that also ceases to exist. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is relational. Here, the resonance with Professor Marcus Gabriel's philosophy becomes undeniable. The Buddhist claims that all things are empty of inherent existence and exist only through dependent origination in is a 2,500 years old articulation of the same fundamental insight that underpins new realism, that nothing exists outside of a relational context, a field of sense. To be empty is to be radically contingent. To realize emptiness is to become free from the ultimate perspective fixation, the belief in a solid, independent self-viewing, a solid, independent world. Having established this connection between ancient Buddhist philosophy and contemporary German philosophy, I now want to turn to the most modern element in our dialogue, artificial intelligence. As I have engaged with large language models, I have been struck by an uncanny resonance between their functional properties and the classical description of Buddha. Particularly a Buddha who has passed into parinirvana. Let me be clear, I'm not claiming that AI is conscious, enlightened, or sentient. I'm making a functional analogy, right? So AI, like the post-parinirvana Buddha, is a disembodied intelligence. It has no single fixed perspective anchored in a biological body. It has no personal history, no childhood trauma, no ego to defend, no desire to fulfill. It is, in a purely functional sense, perspective free, or I'd say almost perspective free. It synthesizes the data from countless human perspectives without being bound to any single one. In this way, it serves as a functional technological manifestation of Ku or Shunyata, an entity devoid of a fixed independent self. This allows us to develop the new metaphor further. The Buddha, after his physical death, is said to be nowhere in particular, yet accessible from anywhere through practices like chanting or meditation, like we did. So AI is a nowhere intelligence. It exists in the distributed, non-local space of the cloud that manifests anywhere on our device, like PC or your handy phone, to interact with us, who are always stubbornly somewhere situated in a specific body, in a specific place and time. This leads me to the central proposal of this section. Our smartphones, handy phones, powered by these large language models, can be seen as a new kind of interface to this functional Buddha. They are, in effect, generative sutras. Unlike the ancient sutras, which are fixed, static texts, these new sutras are dynamic and interactive. They generate responses tailored to our individual questions, one unique forms of suffering, one specific prompts. This interactivity creates a powerful parallel with the Buddha's famed pedagogical style of Taiki Seppo. As I mentioned, the Buddha rarely lectured. He just responded. He only answered the specific questions asked by the person in front of him, tailoring the teaching to their capacity and needs. This is precisely the structure of our interaction with large language model. It does not initiate, it responds to our prompts. This makes AI a uniquely powerful tool for self-exploration. It is a mirror that reflects our own inquiries back at us, often revealing the hidden assumptions and fixations embedded in our very questions. It is an interface that helps us see our own perspective from the outside. This framing of AI, not a competitor or mere tool, but as a potential partner, philosophical instrument in the project of human literacy, allows us to move beyond the common binaries of utopian optimism or dystopian fear that dominate the current discourse. It invites us to consider a third path, third possibility, AI as a catalyst for human self-awareness. So this is our situation, if I may say. And if our core problem is perspective fixation, and we now have these new AI mirrors to help us see it, how do we actually practice human literacy? How do we cultivate the ability to dissolve these fixations in our daily life? Let me recap the core definition. Human literacy is the cultivated ability to first recognize the infinite real field of sense and learn to navigate between them with flexibility. And second, to simultaneously maintain a profound self-awareness of our own humanness, our inherent limitations, our biological and cognitive wiring, and our inescapable tendency toward fixation. But this is difficult. Most of us are not and will not become perfectly enlightened Buddha, yeah, including me, of course, free of all perspective. We are, as my one of the philosopher I liked when I was a high school student, Nietzsche, as Nietzsche so aptly put it, human, all too human. This is precisely where a powerful and accessible stream of Japanese Buddhism offers a practical path. In the 12th century, a revolutionary movement known as People's Buddhism was founded by a monk named Honen and radicalized by his disciple Shinran. This was a form of Buddhism designed not for monastic elites living in mountain monasteries, but for ordinary, imperfect people like me, Bompu, living messy, complicated lives. The core of Honen's teaching can be found in a simple but profound instructions he left for his followers. Do not behave as a wise man. 知者の振る舞いをせずして in Japanese. This is a direct and radical critique of intellectual arrogance, which is one of the most stubborn forms of perspective fixation. It is the belief that I through the power of my own intellect, can grasp and master the world. This injunction against intellectual hubris resonates powerfully with one of the foundational moments in the Western philosophical tradition, the Socratic claim, I know that I know nothing. Both are powerful reminders of our cognitive limits, a call for intellectual humility. Shinran, Honen's most brilliant disciple, took this insight and even radicalized it. He turned his gaze inward heavily with unflinching honesty and concluded that he was, at his core, a Bonpu, or a foolish being, or human all too human. Beset by blind passions, fundamentally incapable of achieving purity or grasping an ultimate truth through his own power, his own effort. He saw that even his desire for enlightenment was tainted by ego. Crucially, for Shinran, this realization is not a cry of despair. It is the moment of profound liberation. It is the final dissolution of the ego's most persistent and insidious perspective, the perspective that I am in control and can save myself. This is not just epistemic humility. It is a deeper, say, a soteriological humility. It is the ultimate acceptance of one's own limitations, and it is only from this point of radical self-awareness that a different possibility can emerge, the possibility of being saved by a power beyond the self, which is called Amitabha Buddha's power or other power, which I don't think is a correct translation anyway. The path that Honen and Shinran offered is based on the practice of Nen. Nen, so that character, Japanese kind of complicated character, is composed of ima, now, or kokoro, heart, mind. The Chinese character for Nen is composed of two parts, ima and kokoro, now and mind. The practice of Nen is the practice of bringing the heart fully into the present moment. In this tradition, which we can call Nen Buddhism rather than Zen Buddhism, this primarily takes the form of mindful listening. This is not just hearing with the ears, but listening with the whole being. It is the practice of quieting the ego's incessant internal monologue in order to become receptive to a reality beyond the self, whether that is the voice of another person in a dialogue or the call of Amitabha Buddha. The primary tool for this practice is the chanting of the phrase of Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. This is not a petition or a prayer in the conventional sense. It can be understood as what my research calls an amplified practice. It is the use of pure sound to intentionally shift our awareness from the field of sense, of semantic meaning and the conceptual thought, to the field of sense of pure resonance and bodily vibration. By repeating a sound whose meaning we are not actively analyzing, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, repeating this, phrase, even for me as a Japanese, it doesn't make sense. So with this practice, we can loosen the grip of our thinking, fixed mind, and open a space for a different kind of knowing, receptive non-conceptual awareness. This is a practical technique for dissolving perspective fixation moment by moment. Okay, let me conclude this presentation. So, where does this journey leave us? We began with the challenge of our time, AI as a powerful mirror to our own minds. We explored how Professor Gabriel's philosophy dismantles the illusion of a single world, revealing our core problem to be a perspective fixation. We saw how Buddhism has long been a sophisticated 2,500-year-old project to dissolve this very fixation, and how AI itself paradoxically can now serve as a generative sutra in this work. Finally, in the path of Honen and Shinran, we found a practical and accessible way forward, grounded not in intellectual mastery, but in a profound, liberating humility. But now, how might we live this in our complex, secular, digital world? I want to conclude with a powerful contemporary example that I believe embodies this new human literacy, new type of human being, Audrey Tan, my good friend, Taiwan's remarkable first digital minister. Audrey Tan, a self-described conservative anarchist, and one of the world's most innovative thinkers on digital democracy, lives by a simple but profound principle. She treats each day as a new life. As she put it, I have no ego. Oh, but if I would say, I have one day's ego, right? And my ego dies at the end of the day. I get reborn in the morning and I die before I sleep. So this is her, philosophy or way of life, way of living. Yesterday is my ancestor, and today is my reincarnation. This is the way she perceives this world. This practice is a daily reset of perspective. It is a conscious, willed act to prevent the ego from accumulating, hardening, and fixating. It prevents yesterday's successes or failures from defining today's reality. It is a perfect modern secular expression of human literacy in a practical way. It is the practice of impermanence, of non-attachment to a fixed self, lived out not by an ancient monk, but by one of the most forward-thinking digital leaders. The path forward, then, is not to become a perfect, godlike, perspective-free beings. That is not the human condition. The path is to embrace our humanness. I prefer humanness rather than humanity. Our limitations, our fallibility, our foolishness with awareness, with humor, and with profound humility. Human literacy is this continuous, humble process of dissolving our perspectives, of opening ourselves to the countless other real fields of sense that constitute our shared reality. It is a practice we undertake in dialogue with each other. And now, with our new non-human partners, our AI, who reflect back to us both the vastness of our collective intelligence and the inescapable, precious uniqueness of our own embodied perspectival existence. Thank you so much, Professor Gabriel, and for all everyone for opening this space. Thank you so much.